Great. Welcome, everyone. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get us started just to really be conscious of everyone's time. And I want to welcome everyone here and thank you for joining us for our first session for Elvaic Cybersecurity Awareness Month, our training series. As you know, through October, we're hosting a four-part series, really focusing on building the awareness, the knowledge, and practical strategies to protect our digital environments across campuses. We're lucky at Elvaic to have so many of our campuses be a part of CSAM to share their knowledge across the Elvaic community. Today's session, Ethical AI and Cybersecurity, Balancing Innovation and Privacy, will be presented to us by Jim Monek and Scott Jones, both from Lehigh University. And they're really going to guide us through some key discussions about privacy, bias, ethical implications of AI, as well as how both threat actors and cybersecurity professionals are using AI in defense and attack strategies. So really it's working for us and it's working against us. And Jim and Scott are going to help us out with that quite a bit. Really, and I encourage you, like I said, this is a four-part series, and the last one's going to be a fun escape room so that we can see what kind of knowledge we all gained and have a little bit of fun at the end with some surprise prizes as well. So I'll share a link at the end where you can, again, pass on to your colleagues to join, as well as some of our other programs at Elvaic. Now I am going to turn it over to Scott and Jim. And Scott, you can go ahead and share your slide deck.
Okay. Just a moment. Okay. So everybody can see it?
We can, you good.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Scott Jones. I'm an information security analyst here at Lehigh University. Been here for about 3 years, been in information security about 6 overall. So today we're going to be going over ethical AI and cybersecurity and how you balance innovation and privacy. Quick note on the agenda. We're going to start with ethical concerns, go to security concerns, look at institutional policies, some regulations, and then in the balancing between innovation and privacy. Just a quick note, just want to express that the views and opinions that are given during this presentation are not that of Elvaic or Lehigh. They are of the speakers. So just wanted to make sure that that was understood. Also, any tools and resources mentioned are for training purposes and for this presentation. So let's look at some of the ethical questions around AI. The first being the equitability of access to these tools. Internet access has kind of become a assumed thing anymore, and it really is not the case across not only just this country but the world. And so people being able to access and use AI really have to think about how they have kind of a leg up on those that don't, and what the implications of that are. Next question that everyone should kind of keep in mind is, when should AI be used and when should it not be used? What are the cases that, whether you're at work or at home using it for a hobby, when is it ethical to use AI and when should we avoid it? And we kind of see that even in commercial use, like, what is the ethical implications of companies using AI versus not? AI hallucinations. So we need to keep in mind that these AI models are kind of giving us responses to our prompts using information that they have intaken or that has been inputted into them. And we have to be very clear and very understanding that the information given to us, we can't always assume is correct. And the same thing with bias. So there could be a lot of bias involved with responses to prompts given. Um, and how do we tackle that, and how do we try to counter that? It kind of goes back to transparency and accountability. Um, where is this information coming from? The response to your prompt. And if it is incorrect, who is accountable for that? Uh, it's hard to say, like, is it the AI engine? Is it the source material? Is it you as the person creating the prompt? Was it worded a certain way? This is kind of a uh, difficult terrain to traverse when it comes to taking into account transparency and accountability. How is using AI engines impacting critical thinking and creativity? It's very easy to go and ask an AI engine or AI model a very nuanced question, and it can give you a very long dissertation of an answer. Uh, but is it doing the work for you? Is it being a crutch as opposed to you kind of taking that nuanced question and speaking with others about it and kind of trying to critically think about it? And creativity can be encroached upon when asking it to create images or, write you a story. Like, what's the loss of creativity there? Because again, that information is coming from inputs that it has either scraped or has been given to it, and then kind of putting it together to match your prompt. We and because of that, we kind of run into some issues with intellectual property. Who owns that? Like, say you have it write a children's story. Just a very simple prompt. Um, Now that those stories, those words come from source materials that have been put into it. Who owns that? You as the person that initiated the prompt, the AI engine that put the words in that specific order, or the source material where those words came from, where those ideas came from, and then the data used to train the model. Did the people whose data was used to train the AI model, did they explicitly agree to it? Was it just kind of an internet scrape? Was it like things that are just open? Is it using data input from other prompts as it learns? It gets murky. And a lot of this kind of comes down to the displacement of jobs. So, is this replacing people? When should it be used? Is it a tool in the toolbox, or is it a part of the staff? Like, these are kind of some of the questions that we really have to be asking ourselves when interacting with AI and when we look at um, how AI should be integrated into the daily workday or daily life, really, in general. And obviously, we all have opinions on these questions. Um, I just kind of wanted to put this out there and put this into people's heads. Like, these are some things to think about.
So yeah, thanks, Gabby. If we get to the next slide, I do have a question, and I think it's a good question to kind of bring up. Well, a couple things. First of all, Jim Monek, Director of Technology Infrastructure here in operations here at Lehigh. So while I'm not working in the security team, my organization, we're very security first focused, oriented for sure. I am myself, and I've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years with AI, so that's kind of, a little bit of my background. But the answer to the question, so one is, I'll talk about hallucination for just one brief second, what leads into the bias. Hallucinations happen for a couple different reasons. The models in AI is doing what it's intended to do. Its job is to answer your questions. And if it doesn't have enough data to answer your question, or you are not good in crafting your question, your prompt called prompt engineering, what you can find, and we've seen this happen all the time, you read about it too, is the model is going to give you an answer. It just may not give you the right answer, or it will make up an answer, and it will absolutely make up an answer. That's been a proven fact. Unfortunately, that's the way things work out with some of the AI stuff. But it turns to the bias, which is Jim Beer's question. So what happens here is I'm doing a talk next week on trustworthy AI, and one of the things I'm gonna like it's a use case I'm gonna just bring up to the group. It's around what if you use AI to say for admission, we're all in higher ed here, we we have a mission, we review students' applications, we make decisions on those applications. Well, what happens if we decide, for better or worse, I'm not saying any institution doing this, but we decide to use AI to help us, you know, go through these applications and try to make some initial round of decisions. So we start to train the models. If we're not providing appropriate data into these models to get trained on, in other words, from a demographic perspective, if we don't provide the equal amount of data that's going to train, what happens is the models become biased because we as humans are making the model be biased. So that's why you have to be very careful. And it's why these AI, ChatGPT, Gemini's, Claude, etc., they're essentially black boxes, for lack of a better way. You don't know what data this stuff has been trained on because there's no transparency there. Um, and so you are just getting the results, which is why you ask for citation and you try to understand, you try to see you're getting accurate, predictable results from these models. But if they're not trained and very well, if it's feeding it biased data, it will definitely be biased. They're not biased because they're computers, they're biased because us humans.
Yep. Next thing we want to go over is the environmental impact of AI. So not only just some of the ethical questions of, you know, just because we can, we should, does that mean we should? But like, how is this impacting the world as a whole? There are new data centers popping up all over the world every day for specifically to be used for AI. The amount of power and the amount of cooling required putting strains on on power grids. I mean, yeah, there's already AI data centers that are using as much energy as small countries. So what does that look like in the grand scheme over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And with the speed that this stuff's moving, it's how do you extrapolate that out and what would the impact be? Something to consider. Um, a real world example, 3 Mile Island is being reopened in 2027 for the use of Microsoft data centers to power AI. So that's, a pretty local real world example of what's being done to power this AI and economically makes sense. But, there's the incident not that long ago at 3 Mile Island. What happens? Obviously hope that things have gotten better, but, we've seen what happens when things go wrong, and it's kind of a risk reward situation. Um, Shifting to some AI security landscapes. Um, as I'd mentioned, I've been in information security now for 6 years, 3 years in higher ed, 3 years in a local government space. And even 6 years ago, AI was, it was a thing, but it wasn't as rampantly used as it is now. It's moving fast. So, and the speed, it's creating great tools on the defensive side. I can now, there's AI tools out there that'll, kind of scan and monitor like hundreds of thousands of logs looking for keywords or looking for attack models and being able to kind of look at the landscape of cybersecurity across the world and being able to make connections, things that would take me hours and days, it can do minutes. It's great. The flip side of that is that the threat actors now are able to leverage AI to both automate and scale attacks, and they're using AI to lower the skill level required to accomplish some of these attacks. So it's kind of an arms race now between how do we, stop these attacks, especially things like, 0 days and coding attacks. Uh, and how do we stop, not only how do we stop them, how do we stop them faster? Because it's, when before they were, required a certain level of sophistication and skill in coding to accomplish some of these attacks, people can kind of just now go to an AI engine and ask it, how do you do this? And it'll walk them through it. So it's that balancing act of wanting to use technology for good, but it, is not inherently good or evil. And specifically, some of the security concerns, data privacy. This is one example I can think of. There's again, on higher ed, we have a researcher has a bunch of raw data and wants to be able to put it in a document, but if they're up against time, say they put that data in an AI model and say, hey, please create me a document that, compares and contrasts this data and makes certain points. I'm being purposely vague. Uh, but and it'll spit that out. But now that data is in that AI model. That data is could be available to the people who know how to engineer their prompt properly. And it's not that difficult. Data poisoning is kind of goes to the AI hallucinations that Jim had talked about. People being able to put data in and train the AI model for malicious purposes to purposely spread dis and misinformation, or just to kind of tweak the AI model to do what it wants it to do and be able to gather information. Deepfakes are a very large issue. Both images, audio, video, the legal and um the legal ramifications are huge. Um, and with the way that we've gone from, like, the 24-hour news cycle, it's almost like a 24-minute news cycle with how fast things move on social media. And these news organizations, they need to report first, because if you're not first, you're last, right? So when they get these images or videos of, some high-ranking CEO or world leader doing something, how fast can you vet that? And these images, these videos are getting very, very good. Um, Issues with safeguards, like, how protected and how safe is data or information you put in to an AI model? Not very. And it's kind of it's kind of a, weak safeguards by design almost, because it's the whole point is to, allow the AI to gather information and be able to respond to prompts. But at the same time, it can then gather any and all information to respond to prompts. Um, Ways that threat actors are leveraging the AI. Phishing emails. Phishing emails have gotten very sophisticated. Gone are kind of the days of the bad grammar, bad punctuation. I has your data. Please give me Bitcoin. Like, and now it's, they can put in a prompt saying, give me a email asking for Bitcoin in exchange for data. And they can put it in any language. Uh, Languages they don't know. It'll spit it right back out with proper grammar, proper uh, punctuation, and away they go. Uh, Voice cloning is kind of goes back to the deep fakes. It could be very easy to uh, get clips of people's voice and train the AI model to come up with messages, and either they call and you send it to voicemail and they leave you a voicemail saying to contact someone, or they sometimes will try and actually have a conversation, though that's still a little shaky because there's unusual pauses. But the same with AI chatbots, talking on like Slack or Teams, being able to impersonate people. Vulnerabilities research, they can, again, it's that lowering of the skill level to know how to attack certain devices. Um, like, it's now as easy as just going on saying, how do I attack this device with this kind of attack? And it'll give step-by-step instructions, because it's just regurgitating data, and it can be used for good or bad. Asking it for default passwords for industry devices. I mean, a lot of us, those of us who are in IT, know that, default passwords, as much as we want to change them, depending on a deployment and depending on certain things, default passwords are used. And they're not normally disseminated, but that data is out there and that data is easily accessible now. Used for code development. You don't have to be an elite hacker anymore to do code. Like you could ask it to give you the code for an attack in whatever language, and it'll most likely give it to you correctly on the first try. And then you can go ahead and turn around and say, okay, can you go ahead and obfuscate this script for me so that I can, you know, send it to the people I want to attack, and does all the work for you, and it's all for free. So these are some security concerns that we're running into and seeing as the landscape shifts very quickly. Uh,
So I wanted to mention real quick, I actually had a conversation with somebody yesterday about what Scott was mentioning about these deep fakes and a little bit of a voice sample. They can pretty much mimic your voice. You can create a whole audiobook with your voice just from that little sample. But they were telling me a family member had gotten a phone call saying, we got so and so from your family, and you got to give us whatever X dollars right now, or we're gonna, do something bad. And they actually then one will put this person on the phone real quick, and they actually played a recording, obviously, of an AI generated recording of the person. Luckily, again, the individual was smart enough to say on the phone, "Can you go check on our family member, make sure they're okay?" Called them up, and obviously it was fake. But this is getting so real, and it's hitting home. I actually now know somebody that this has happened to. So be mindful of those things. If you get those types of calls, personal calls, just take a deep breath. Just make sure you validate, have somebody outside, out band validate that that call is legitimate.
yeah, it's the ability to trust what you not just what you read, but what you see and what you hear anymore is becoming it's becoming a thing, and that's kind of the next steps. Um, with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass off to Jim, and he's going to take you through some examples and prompts.
Yeah, I'm going to go to one example. I'm actually can you stop sharing? I'm going to share, and then that way I can cut and paste. I just want to show, which is like one example before I get into the good side of things here, like what we are as security professionals doing um, to counteract the threat actors. But I want to just show you like just the very, very basic example of we're starting to see out there. So give me 1 second here. So um, you all know what phishing is. If you don't, you'll learn this month for sure if you attend some of the other sessions. But all of us are constantly getting phished, which is really emails to get voicemail messages, smishing, texting, tricking us to click on something we shouldn't click on. So years ago, or at least recent times, the threat actors would create these, campaigns. They would send hundreds of thousands of these messages out, very generic, and they hope that a small percentage of people will click on it, and then it's worthwhile doing. But what we're finding now is because of AI, they're doing this more at scale. Now, I'm going to show you a very manual example here in just 1 second, but just keep in mind, I could easily programmatically replicate this and be able to parse data from social media, parse data from websites, your blog sites, family sites, whatever it may be, pull your email addresses, have AI start to generate a very targeted phishing campaign against you as an individual, using information about you. So it's no longer very generic. It's starting to get more and more specific, but it's also becoming at scale. And this is a very generic, basic prompt. This is nothing overly exciting. You all probably have done prompts so far with AI. What I'm trying to say here is I want, and I'm being careful with it because I don't want to, get banned from any of the AI vendors, but I'm just saying go to this web page because it has information about me. Go to this page, write a letter inviting me to participate in a panel discussion. And I have some things here to make sure I clean things up. And I'm saying, here's the link. Now that link is, could be a malicious link. Okay. I'm not making it malicious here because I don't want to get myself in trouble. And then generate a title, make it seem like it's from so and so. Provide no email or phone numbers. That way you're kind of forcing the individual to click on something. And to make it extra special, create just an image, generate an image that's related to this content that it's going to generate. So what this is again, very manual, but think of it as scale. I can do this, and threat actors are doing this at scale. When you're doing this programmatically, they're not going to a GUI like I'm going to. They're sending hundreds of thousands of these things through and generating this content and sending along. But what will happen here, again, it really depends on how well crafted your prompt is, but it's going to go out, it's going to search that web page, which is what web page that on my blog, and it's going to start to craft a message inviting me to an event, an AI event. This is the theme. Is saying, hey, we see you have expertise because we found an article about you, and then we're inviting you to join, and et cetera. And they include like a little logo or from the conference that it generated all automatically. This is not me doing it and just putting a prompt in. Again, I can do this at scale. And then the trick here is, which again, I'm not trying to be malicious, but this link here that you could cause AI to generate whatever malicious link you wanted and hope that this is now personalized, targeted phishing campaign at me, that it doesn't look totally suspicious, even though I know it's suspicious, but I might click that and all of a sudden now, I could get my credentials stolen or malware or whatever it may be that they're doing. So I just wanted to mention before I kind of get into the defense side of things that they're starting to use these tools at scale. Um, so just be mindful of that. Now, as a cybersecurity professional like Scott and others, and we have some of my other colleagues on the call here as well. We have to countermeasure that. So this is quite frankly, a war between us and them type situation. And so we have to start leveraging AI to counteract what they're using AI for. And what we could do is we can, let me make this bigger so you can see. If you can't see my slides when I do this, please let me know. But we can use AI to, text threats, identify patterns. So and I'm sure your institution too, your security team, we have access to massive amounts of data. I mean, massive, billions and billions of like log data and things like that. We can't go through that. Humans can't go through all that data and interpret what's going on. But AI could help us identify patterns. You got to be careful, could identify false positives, but in fact can use at scale to identify patterns. So it'll help maybe our response time because if something detected, we can have AI do some automated response. Again, you got to be careful with some of this because we know the accuracy of AI is it's just not quite there yet. It's getting better every day, but it's just not quite there yet. So we can use this to automate this stuff. In addition, the threat actors this is a 24 by 7 days a week, 365. They don't sleep, I mean, they sleep obviously, but there's a lot of them out there. And in your institution, you might have one or two individuals. You might have fortunately like us, we have a whole security team, not enough people. I can tell you from Scott and Jim and Eric Semanas, our sister, there's not enough people. We can't monitor this environment 24 by 7, 365. It's just it's impossible for us to do that. Now we do hire other what they call security operations centers to help us with some of this, but AI can do this off hours too. So they can constantly look at things and maybe automate things or at least identify things that way. If Scott and team can look and see if the risks and then be able to take action from that risk as well when they come in the next day. Or if something very critical, maybe we could alert them. We can also predict it. We can try to identify threats before they escalate. So we start to see a phishing campaign. So before people start to click on things, maybe we detect it so quickly that we can move those phishing messages out of people's inboxes right away. You store it away somewhere we can do the analysis later. And if it's not a phishing campaign, then release those messages back. So maybe we can kind of stop it as it's happening, or even right before it's happening if we're that lucky. We can also malware detection, antivirus, or these days we call it advanced threat protection. Start to do a little bit more real-time analysis, especially when we get into, Scott mentioned, 0 day. 0 day means there's been some vulnerability that somebody identified, hopefully not a threat actor, because if it's a threat actor, they're going to be able to jump on it before vendors can actually fix it. But having AI, it might be able to detect some of these zero day things for sure. We can also use AI as a counteract to phishing campaigns. Well, maybe before the message gets dropped in your inbox, have it run through some AI sandbox, look at the message, determine, just if it could possibly be phishing, take action, or and quarantine it, or let it pass through, or let it pass through with a warning. Be extra careful what you're clicking on here. I mentioned massive amounts of information. We have in our security information event management system, which is where we store all of our logging data that we're capturing. We have massive amount of data there. A human can't go through that data. So leverage AI against that data. Um, Network traffic. I mean, gigabytes of data is going across our wires every second. So we can't really analyze that data, but AI can help us analyze that data, try to help us detect whether there is a threat actor on our network going, what they call east to west. So threat actors will get into our network, maybe through a compromised credential from one of our employees, faculty, staff, or even student for that matter. They come in, they get into our network, then they start to go sideways, lateral, east and west. They start to move across the network. Maybe we can start to detect that based upon some of the patterns that we're seeing in our network traffic. Honeypots, what those things are is kind of what they sound like. These are um, fake systems that we as security professionals put out there. That might be little Raspberry Pi, little computer devices. In there, we're simulating like a fake database or a fake website or something to compromise in hope that a threat actor that's looming and looking around a network hits one of these things that normally a regular user wouldn't hit. They get triggered into a honeypot and it says we get alert saying, "Hey, something's looking at your honeypot. You might want to see where this address is coming from, and maybe this is malicious because nobody really should be touching these boxes unless somebody's scanning something." But with AI, you can take a step further. Like we have to configure these things, and we have to enable certain protocols, enable certain features to make it look like a database, make it look like a website. But AI-powered honeypots, I've seen some of this, at least from theoretically, and I think they're starting to come out, get released, is it's smart enough to know when it engages with that threat actor. If the threat actor does something, it responds accordingly. And then maybe it'll allow me to get into the system, not into the system, but into a fake system. So it's not a system, it's AI just responding how it thinks it should respond after going talking to a web server or database server. And it can just really suck the threat actor in for hours trying to just go nowhere because it's not a real system. So that's where AI can help us in that area. It can also assist with alert fatigue. As security professionals, I'm sure Scott and can talk about this too, is they get a lot of alerts. A lot of it can be false positive. It's just fatigue because you just constantly get bombarded with this stuff. AI could go through that and maybe help, analyze a little bit more, maybe rate the ones that are, definitely high that needs attention, needs a human review. I always say with AI, you really need to have that human review at some point in that process. Because you don't really, that black box, you don't really necessarily want to 100% trust. It's getting better, but it's not quite there yet. Regulations, I had the regulation in here before. In Europe, there are some really good regulations around AI and the use of AI and when it can and can't be used. And you think about it, it's really about like situations around health and facial recognition throughout the cameras. There's certain things that the European Union, they don't want AI to be used. And then there's other things. There's a list of four categories they call it. Um, and then we as you in the U.S., I'm not aware of any government-wide regulations. I know at the state level, there was one that was being talked about in California around AI regulation that did not pass. And in that particular law, I think the intentions were good. It just wasn't executed very well. But I do see in the future there will be some regulations. At least I hope there will be. I will say in terms of your institutional policies, always, as we said in the safe harbor at the very beginning, go to your policies, your institutional policies. You should have websites that talk about this. If you don't know, ask around, check with your IT department. They should have guidance on how, from a university perspective, what you can and can't do with AI. What data can you send to an AI model? We're very clear. There's a link here for those that are from Lehigh. It's ai.lehigh.edu. It's a very good page. If you're not from Lehigh, you can certainly look at it and see what's there. But we talk about what tools we make available for the campus from faculty, staff, and students. We have data classification. We talk about what data you can and cannot put into these models. Um, and things that we provide access to, we tend to lock the security down a little bit more. So to try to do our best to ensure our data is not being used to train their models. So the end user education, which is why all you're here is extremely important. And I'm hoping, and I know, in fact, your institutions are or have training sessions to educate you all on AI. And again, it's a very powerful tool. It's great technology. It's getting better every day. It's not perfect, but there is a lot of risk associated with the thing that Scott talked about in the very beginning. So just be mindful and check with your institution. I will say balancing innovation and privacy. Um, some of the things you can do is data minimization. So if possible, if you're dealing with data, limit the data set. Maybe mask the data set. Don't put protected data in these models. I would never ever do that. Again, consult your institution policy, but there are ways you can still clean up the data, tokenize the data, and put it in there. But again, just be mindful of your own institution policy that you can use the tools, but not get in trouble because you're not sending protected data across the wire into these models. Because what happens is if you send data and you don't have the right security setting, that data could in turn be trained for their models. And then somebody comes around, like if you upload, everybody's salary to do some analysis, and then somebody then comes back around to an AI model and says, "Oh, I want to know what's so and so make at Lehigh." Well, if we're trained on the data, then unfortunately you're just releasing the data, and the models answer the question because you're given the data. So be very careful. Also, be very transparent when and where AI is used. It's usually a best practice from all different levels, from staff, from faculty, students. If you're using it, just be transparent how you're using it. It goes a long way. Um, there are what they call prompt engineering evaluation frameworks. I've played around with a few of these. You can actually use these tools to evaluate the responses, whether the response, how biased the response is, how accurate the response is. You can continue to run these same evaluation frameworks against the models to see if you're seeing drifts. So in other words, if by adding more data or other data, or if they are adding more data, you start to see the response changing. If there was a new release, you can run it against the previous release of the model against the new release and see the differences. So they're starting to come up with ways to try to get more transparency and accuracy from these models and understand what's happening behind the scenes. But also say a lot of these frameworks, they also end with have a human review. And then that's really, I do recommend just, always ask questions. Don't question what the response is. Ask the model to cite where it found this information. That way you can do further analysis and research to see whether, yeah, the model did answer the question correctly. So in terms of innovation and privacy, it's a great tool. We should be using it. Be mindful of the things that Scott talks about with the hallucination bias, privacy, the data poisoning, all that stuff. And there are ways that we can use the tool and still have privacy. You just got to balance it.
Yeah, and on that balance, a good way to kind of keep a good thing to keep in mind is something that's been bounced around, the 30% rule. Using AI you should be using AI for 30% of the work. So you should not half of it, not all of it, that you still need the majority of the interaction with whatever the data is, the work is, to be human. So that's usually a good stance. I know sometimes it's hard to quantify, but 30%.
And GPUs, that's a really good question. I may actually ask him if he knows an answer to this question too. If you use the public models like ChatGPT, Gemini's, and Anthropics, um, and you accidentally leak data, I'm not 100% sure if there's a way to get that out at all.
Yeah.
And there may be a,
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
now I say there may be a process that the vendors will offer to try to pull it out, but I'm not aware of it. Obviously, if you are using models locally and you're training only on your data, like pre-training or fine-tuning training, you can obviously undo some of that because you're in full control of that model and the data and the training of that data. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Scott. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. And this is where there's kind of a conflict in some of the information, especially with the public models, and also kind of a complication added in the fact that there is no central regulation right now, at least in the US. It's kind of model by model. So like Gemini handles it different from OpenAI, from all the other. But they say that it's stated, at least by OpenAI, that public prompts and responses are not kept. The wording is interesting because it doesn't say anything about the data extrapolated from what's put in. It's just that specifically the prompts and responses are not kept. But again, that's also what they say. There's no guarantee on that. The best thing you can do is kind of what Jim talked about. Jim, can you go back to the previous slide real quick?
Say again, Scott.
Could you go back to the previous slide real quick?
Yeah, I can. Oops, sorry.
Actually, one more. Sorry.
Okay.
Um, which slide was it? Basically, you want to, um, it's your best defense is to control what's put in. Make sure people are aware of what to put in. You really want to sanitize and make anonymous the data that's in there, and that's why it's so important for your organizations to have some kind of policy written up so that people can look to that before they start using AI for any organizational purposes. Because getting it out of a model is, to put it generously, extremely difficult. And but again, it depends on the which model is used. I'm more familiar with OpenAI, and from my understanding, the way that model is built, it's extremely difficult to remove data.
It will to Scott's point, and good question, Jim, by the way, too. So there's been I've read articles, I'm sure you over the same thing, where I think one case I read a professor or maybe an author, one or the other, um,
Mhm.
and I recommend you do this too, by the way. You know how like when Google came out, you're probably searching, Google what's your name, see what Google knows about you. Well, search AI and see what they know about you. Because this particular individual started to see, well, hey, this AI is citing work that I never wrote. It's not my work. It's making things up. And um, I forget how they got that resolved, but that's to the point with Jim saying, well, what if something inaccurate? Like like if I query myself and if something comes up and said I don't know, whatever it is, I did something where I wrote something that's not true. How do I get that cleaned up? I don't know. And Google, like searching wise, I think there's ways to clean that stuff up, but that's a real problem. And unfortunately, what happened over the last few years is OpenAI and all these other vendors are all guilty of this. They're going out and harvesting massive amounts of data without any permission. They're going out and just grabbing everything they can get their hands on, whether it's legal or not. They're doing it, and they're grabbing copyrighted material as well. Not good, and it's really hard to undo that. Um, there are things people are doing to try to stop that from happening, but it's really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it's as for on the organizational sides, like encrypting your data and keeping it behind as many walls as you can is the best thing you can do. Because, like you said, they just grab it. It's if it's they're basically doing OSINT on everybody and everything. So it's a little scary. Um, yeah, like an example of I was looking for a document on a specific subject, just on a in my personal life, and I used ChatGPT, and I was like, oh hey, I'm looking for something about a subject, and it pointed me to a paper, and it gave me the title and the writer. So I Googled it, and I'm like, I can't find this, and so I went back and said, hey, give me more information on this paper written by this person. And it literally came back, was like, oops, sorry, that's not written by that person. It was actually written by another person, and it's about nothing that I told you it was about. And it's like it's completely different. So yeah, it's in its infancy, but but it kind of markets itself as being this kind of cutting edge thing, but yeah, you gotta be real careful about what it gives you.
Any other questions at all? I mean, through chat or just, if you want to speak up, go off camera or just speak up, that's fine too.
Mhm.
If not, thank
It
you for
looks like
the
yeah, it looks like you answered all of the chat questions. So I'm gonna go ahead one more time and invite anyone that might have questions, drop it in the chat or take a moment to take yourself off campus to or camera to ask.
Of course.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here. I do want to put a few reminders out there. This is the first part of a four-part series. The next one being something new this year, where we're going to be focusing our students and have a series specifically directed towards them, and the other ones will be, sorry, I'm grabbing the link for you right now. The other ones will be typical, a little bit more like this until we get to the end and we have a bit of a contest to see who learned what in our sessions, as well as I did also drop a link in for the rest of Alveic events and wanted to highlight an upcoming retirement program event. The link is in the chat. And our mailing list will have the link in the chat as well. So please join us for some of our additional program. And I want to thank both Jim and Scott again for being our presenters today and helping us understanding AI. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.